we are now. So we went up, we went down, and now we're still in the same place. Up, down, same place, up, down, same place, up, down, wrestles off a little bit. VIX fell off a cliff. This thing was 21 on November 1st, and now it's 1470. So 1/3 of the VIX is gone. We sell a lot of premium in our portfolio, so when the VIX goes down, the value of the premium we sold goes down, and that can hurt us. It'll on paper anyway. That's the very important thing about the portfolios. You have to learn, when you're doing options, you have to learn to set your own price, not just go by what the broker tells you, because the broker prices are going to give you like a worst case scenario. Because they're going to give you the worst part of the bid and ask range, and it's not true. What you care about is where the stock really is, not what it's bid for, not what it's asked for, not what the options say. You care about where the stock actually is. That's the value of your options. Everything else is just bullshit premium. You know, it's betting, it's noise. It's like, you know, it's like in a football game. There's a spread, right? There's a point spread, but that doesn't really tell you what the score of the game is going to be. There's an over under, and that tries to tell you what the score is going to be. But once the game starts, what matters? The spread doesn't matter, and the over under doesn't matter. What matters is the actual score. You have to filter out the noise, and you know, and you do that. You know, if you made a bet on the game, that's one thing. But I mean, when you're looking in the morning and everybody's going, wow, the spread is this and the point total is this, and everybody thinks they're going to be 42 points scored in this game, the Jets will win by 7, blah, blah, blah. But when you're watching the game on the field, that's all gone the minute the game starts. So everything they were saying was bullshit, just like the election, right? It was all bullshit once the voting started. Then you're like, oh, Trump kicked Harris's ass. That's what really happened. And you've got to do that. You got to remember that. You can't latch on to these predictions. And that's what the option market is. It's a prediction market. It's a betting market. They don't know where it's going to be. These are the guesses of the pollsters, basically. And the pollsters have no freaking idea what they're doing. And that's great for us. We take amazing advantage of the fact that they have no idea what's really going to happen. And so what we do is we try to use some logic, and I'll go to that in a minute with our member chat, but we just go with the logic and say what should happen. So as a good example, in fact, let's take a look at some who said that to me? Jared, I think. So just now in the member chat room, yeah. So Jared said to me, I have some gold positions. I have 2030 January 13 calls, and gold is at 1685. So he's got January 13 calls. Well, how much are they worth? Well, we're at 1685, therefore they're worth $3.85. I mean, sure, they're going to have some premium on them, but they're worth $3.85 because that's where gold is. He's no longer speculating on it. He has it. That's what he owns. So there is, yes, there is a small time premium on those options, but it doesn't really matter because he effectively has said, I want to own gold for $13 on January, in January. At the moment, gold is $16. He has $16.85. He has the right to own it. So that's what he cares about. What's the actual price of gold? And he says he's been selling, oh, and he sold 25.17. So his target is 17. But the 17s, and I believe they are, I must have written it down here somewhere. Cash the 13s, keep a stop on the 17s. So the 17s are 1350 or whatever they are. I don't know where it came to 2700, but the 17s are not 1350, they're $1.35. So they're about $1.35. And they're all premium because we're below 17, right? So I encourage him to buy back, I'm sorry, not to buy back, to sell these calls because these calls are $4. So he's going to get $12,000 if he sells them right now. his spread is $4. $4 is the most he can possibly make on the spread. So I don't care if it's, if it's November, whatever the hell today is, if it's November 13th, or if it was June 13th, or if it's January 13th, right before they expire. What is the difference? The point is, $4 is the most he could possibly have gotten on the spread. So given that the short calls are all premium, the short 17s are all premium, at the moment he can pull $4 off the table. The most he could get on the spread can be pulled off the table right now. Gold is on a downward trajectory. In the long term, I'm very happy to buy it at this price, but in the next 3 weeks, 4 weeks, who knows what's going to happen. So while he can take $4 off the table, take $4 off the table. That was all you were ever going to get for those calls. So you take those off the table, and what does that do? That leaves you with these guys at $1.35, the short calls. Well, you don't really want to have them naked because gold could pop back up for very little reason. You don't want to have them naked. So what do? You take your $12,000 that you just cashed out your 13 longs with, right? And I said keep a stop on the 17s. So maybe you keep a stop at like $3,000 or something like that you're going to take them off the table, and set up a new spread. And you can afford to, and you can take the money and buy 60 of the 2027 15 22 spreads, still in the money, not as much in the money, but 15 is down here. So you buy 60 of the 15 22 spreads for $235 net, and that is $14,100. And now, so those, he's taken a spread that has a maximum value of $12,000, and he's turned it into a spread that has a maximum value of $36,000. That's a pretty good trade-off. And it also, though, is covering his short calls with a lot more money to cover. And it allows him to spend 2 more years selling short calls if these do expire worthless. Even if they don't expire worthless, you can roll it, and eventually you'll be able to sell more short calls, so he'll be able to derive an income off it. But that's what you do. So let's say he originally spent $2 for his spread, and he said selling the other 5 short calls. So he got his original spread for $2, and he sold some short calls. So maybe his basis is like $1.50 or $1 on the spread, and it's going to pay him $12,000, and he had a $3,000 basis. Let's say $4,000, whatever. So he made $8,000. So what's he doing? He's taking $12,000 more than he actually made. He's taking $12,000 and he's putting it into a new spread, and the new spread is a $36,000 spread with upside potential. But even though the 15s are less than the money, you also have to keep this in mind. He only had 30 of the 13s, right? And so at, let's say 17, so it's $17. Those are $4 in the money, $12,000, right? But now he's got 60 of the 15s. Those are $2 in the money, $12,000. He is the same amount in the money as he was before. And everything above this number is gravy, except his gravy is now 2 times for every penny it goes up. It's 2 times what he had before, because he only had 30 before. So it doesn't affect his net position long. And again, you have to learn to just look at the real numbers. Okay, now he's got 60, which is like 6,000 shares at 15, where before he had 3,000 shares at 13. And since 13 is 4 in the money and 15 is 2 in the money, but you have twice as many 15s, then he is just as much in the money, except he'll make double for every penny above, and his ceiling is no longer $17, it's now $22. And yes, $22 might be a bit of a stretch given the way gold has been behaving, but that just means he's going to make money selling short calls. Let's say he sells 10 short calls a month, and he brings in, not a month, a quarter. Let's say he sends 10 short calls a quarter for $1.50. So that's $1,500 a quarter. And so assuming the gold is flat or down, he will make $1,500 8 times. That's $12,000. It seems like nothing. You're like, oh, what's the point? It's only $1,500 because it's $1,500 per quarter for 2 years. So it's $12,000 more than his entire original spread. He will make an income selling short calls. If gold is flat or gold is down, he's going to make his $12,000. The only way he doesn't make his $12,000 is if gold goes up sharply. And I'm talking about on the short calls. Then he might not make $12,000. He might lose some money. He might come out even. He might be ahead. He might have to roll a bunch. Who knows? But he might not make his $12,000 there. But you know what will happen? The only reason that would be happening to him is because his long position will be going deeper and deeper and deeper into the money, and that's where he makes $24,000 at 20, whatever it was, 22. So up to 22, he makes $24,000. If he sold the $17 calls, 10 of them, and gold went to 22 on 10 short calls that he sold, he would have to pay back $5,000. The difference between 17 and 22, right? Still makes $24,000, and then he has to give back $5,000. The only way he's going to lose money on the short calls is if he makes much, much more money on his spread. Otherwise, he's going to make $12,000 selling calls every single quarter, and that is more money than his entire spread was worth when he started. And that's why that's a good trade. That's why you keep at it, you roll it over. And that's why our portfolios exponentially grow year after year, because you start out with these nice simple trades, just like he did. He did exactly the right thing. He started out with a very simple trade. He had 25 13s and he sold 25 17s, and against that he sold 5 short calls. Oh, I'm sorry, it's 30 and 25, so he wasn't even taking a risk. I would have sold 10. He sold 20, because see, the thing is 10 can't hurt you. Just like I just explained, right? 10 can't really hurt you enough to worry about it. Therefore, why not sell 10? 5 can't hurt you at all because he's covered. He's got 5 long. He's got 30 longs and 25 shorts. So there's nothing about selling 5 short-term calls that can hurt him, and he's bringing in income. But in this case, same example I just gave you, he's bringing an income of $6,000 over 2 years. Whereas I'm bringing an income of $12,000 over 2 years. So would you rather have 6,000 or 12,000? And as I said, though, there's no really bad case. It's if it goes way up on you, all you're going to end up doing is making your $24,000 on the spread and paying the guy back $5,000 because you were too conservative on the short calls. That's not a big deal. So that's why I like the uncovered. That's why I like to do this gap uncover, because if you have this gap, you can, depending on how you feel any given month, you sell 5, you sell 10. But you know what? You never have a reason not to sell 5 because you're always covered. So it's only when you get a little toppy, you say, you know what, I'll sell 10 this time. All right, and that brings us to IBM in the next example, which I'll show you guys. So very, very concrete way to make a lot of money. And by the way, this whole spread is good for a new trade because it's fantastic. I just explained it. It's fantastic. Oh, not only that though, but you can also sell some puts. He already sold, I don't know if he sold some puts, but I didn't talk about that. You could also sell some short puts to further offset the cost. So it's a phenomenal trade. Probably I should make that a top trade. That is a good trade. Got $12,000 in income. So the spread as it is $14,100 without the short puts. So if you sell short puts on it, you're going to drop your net down to, let's say you say $5,000 worth of puts. You're going to drop your net down to $9,000, and the return on it is up to $60,000 at 22. and you know you got a $12,000 income coming in. So if gold goes down and I end up having to spend money on, let's say, the $15 puts, right? Let's say sell $10, $15 puts, whatever. Then, but you know, or let's say sell $12, $18 puts. That's let's say I get $5 for those, right? For $10, $18 puts. So I get $5,000 for selling the $18 puts, and my worst case is I'm assigned gold to purchase for $18,000. But I know that obviously if gold is going down, that means every single time I'm selling these short calls, I got to win it. So that means I have not even 8, but 9, because I would sell one. I could sell one right now. I could sell 9 short puts, but either way, let's say it's $12,000. So because it didn't go down, because it went down, otherwise the puts wouldn't trigger. So therefore, if that went down and the puts triggered, I'm going to make $12,000 selling short calls, and I'm going to get hit with my $18,000 cost for 1,000 shares. So my net is $6,000 on 1,000 shares. That's fine, $6 a share. I really would like to own gold for $6 a share. Got no problem with that at all. And what happens to the rest of the spread 2 years from now? Well, it's the same role we're doing now. There's no harm. Even though it's been a bit disappointing, he's still pulling out his full value. And frankly, had he done it here, just what is that, a week ago, 2 weeks ago? Had he done it 2 weeks ago, he would have pulled out $4 more, double. That's why you take the money and run. And again, this goes back to the IBM play. That's exactly what we did. It was too high. We loved the stock, but the stock was too high. So we took advantage of it and cashed out. Was it risky? Yes, it is a little risky. We basically went short on IBM, which is a stock we think is fantastic, but we didn't think it was that fantastic, you know? I had a Porsche Cayenne, and it could go easily 160, 170, 180, you know, in that range. It was very easy to get out to that speed. But would it go 210 or 220? And I'd say no. And even if it did, I sure as hell know it isn't going to go much higher than that, right? So just because I love the car, and just because I knew it could do X and Y, I knew it could do 180. But then if somebody's betting it's going to do 220, which is an option, right? They're taking an option. They say, I think your car can do 220. I'm like, no, it can't. No, if it does, it'll do it for a bit and it'll blow up. It's not made to do that. Here, in fact, let's take a look. Cayenne. Maximum speed. See, they're only rated 152, so 180 is, or 180 is already pushing it. So there's no freaking way this car is going to go up 220 miles an hour. So just because you love a stock and you think it's great and you think it's going to do amazing things, right? Doesn't mean you should be an idiot about it. So IBM, when we did our last review, was at 240. And we were getting blown out by the short calls that we had sold, and we were in pain from the transaction. And rather than capitulating or doing whatever, we got aggressively short on it, because that's as much as it should have been. And even though earnings were a beat, well, their top line, their EPS was a beat, and then when you take it apart, it's not. So the non-GAAP, it wasn't really a beat. But anyway, I said at the time, and I'll show you what I said at the time, we'll get to that later. There's just no freaking way it's going higher than this on earnings. Maybe a little bit higher, but not higher. So we shorted. What did we do? Exactly what I just talked about. We cashed out our IBM right here. We sold our long calls and left all the shorts. That turned us from very bullish to very bearish automatically. Not to mention, in fact, we dropped $500,000 in cash into our portfolio, in the long-term portfolio. No, it's Butterfly, actually. Yes, in the Butterfly portfolio. And that's crazy because the Butterfly portfolio, I mean, like 250% of what we started with, and that's just from one position. So, you know, we started out, we had a target. So just because something goes up doesn't mean you don't bet it's going to stop. And I know everybody loves to go, oh, it's such a crazy market and you never know this and you never know that. It's like, yeah, you do. There's physics. I just said that about Tesla like 2 days ago. I said, this is it. Because it's 100x. This is 100 times earnings to them, 350. And I said, this is where it stops. Here, look, here's their trend line. This is 100 times earnings. They haven't actually done shit to justify this entire move. Therefore, I bet they go down from here. I will be very, very surprised to see them go up from here. Oh, and what's this? Here's your, and look, and RSI 70. That's our favorite and only technical indicator we actually believe in. Look at this. Look what happened the last time they hit RSI 70. Whoops. That's a big whoops. So here we are again, RSI 70. And it's probably not done here because, you know, well, look, so Elon just got some kind of position of something to do something. I don't know what he's doing. Apparently it's a department of promoting Dogecoin. That's really scary too. Because, you know, he had attached himself to this coin many years ago, and it didn't work out that well for him. But now he's named the department he's in charge of DOGE, the same as the coin that he promotes. So he's using his influence and so on and so forth to now promote a cryptocurrency. He's got a constant platform and a government backing and so on and so forth. It's a really sick situation. But anyway, we don't care. We don't care what happens. It's all good. Donald Trump will fix everything. Where are we? All right. So what did we talk about today? We talked about Powell speaking tomorrow at 3 o'clock. And in fact, I don't even know what he's talking about, so why don't we find out? What is Powell talking about tomorrow? 3 p.m., Jerome Powell at Conversation. No, something official. Wait, what? Oh no, because we're in like the 5th. Wrong day. Economic outlook. Okay, so speaking of the Dallas Fed, apparently. I got that from down here. Oh, it says there's Dallas. All right, so it's just the conversation with Jerome Powell. So it's a rate setting conversation of some sort. And we'll see what that is. And today somebody spoke and it didn't come up here. Tomorrow we have Adriana Kugler is speaking at the Latin American Caribbean Economic. So she's not going to talk much about US policy. She's just speaking of that. So you got to just pay attention to what the forum is also to see if they're going to say anything. All right, so we'll see what happens, but he's speaking tomorrow, so we got to pay attention to that. So the point I was making today is inflation since 1980 has been going up at this very, very, very steady pace. And if nothing else had happened, it would be here. So this is the gap, and that gap is 280 to 320. It's like 50. It's still a lot. It's 50, so it's a 20% gap. That's a lot. So in this amount of time, we have 20% more inflation than we should have had. That's a lot of inflation. And it's not going away. That's the thing you have to get off the reports too. The report says we're still going at this 3.6% pace. So if the core CPI is still going at a 3.6% pace, then we're not really going to catch up. It's not getting better. It's just going back to the normal. So from here, it's going to now go up on the normal pace. That's all they're doing. So when they talk about fighting inflation and getting inflation out of control, this is not normal. This happened in the 80s. We had huge inflation in the 80s, and see what we did? We went from this nice flat path where inflation was, let's call this 20, and it went to 40 over, let's see, how many years is this? So from 1945 to 1970, which is 25 years? Yeah, 25 years. So in 25 years, inflation went up 20%. So that's 1% a year. That was our trajectory then. Then things exploded, not here, it's fine here, all the way 74, 73, right? What happened? Nixon, one act. Richard Nixon, in order to help fund the Vietnam War, to allow the US to just print money to cover up all the money he was spending killing people in Vietnam for. Why? Does anyone remember? Hands, anybody? Why were we there? What were we doing? What was the point? Does anyone even know what that war was for? Anyway, so we had this war in Vietnam, had been going on for many, many years at that point. And Nixon and Kissinger, which decided they wanted to win it by killing as many people as possible. It seemed to be their decision at some point. And poor me, I was like 10 years old. It's like my older brothers had draft cards. I remember that. They were terrified. Get out of high school. When you graduate high school, you get a draft card. It was a good incentive to stay in school, though, because if you dropped out of school, you got a draft card too. Basically, you were okay. They'd leave you alone until you graduated high school. Then you went into the lottery. And they learned that lesson. That's the way you get voted out of office, is to threaten to draft everybody. Anyway, so Nixon took us off the gold standard, and from 1974 or 3, whatever it was, let's say 1973, we were at 40, and in 1984, let's call it, so basically 10 years later, we're at 100. So that in 10 years is up 60. So we average 6% inflation, not not mind-blowing inflation, but basically it's the same thing that happened to us here too, except in a shorter time frame. But over this period of time from 73 to 83, when we elect Reagan, because why? Because Jerry Ford's whip inflation now buttons that he used to wear, and Jimmy Carter's, what are you gonna freaking do about it? That didn't work. So we ended up pulling Reagan in. He didn't do anything. Well, he just ran its cycle. It just, the prices went up, they ran their cycle. And and inflation calmed down for a while. But then it was back to a normal, but the normal trajectory then from 1980, well, let's say from 1985, we're at 100 to 2005, we're at, even if you say it's 200, okay, that's up 100, that's up 5, it's still up 5%. Wait a minute, is that correct? Because that's not many years. 1985 is 100, and 2005, I mean, you don't want to say it's not 200, it's 180, sorry, it's 180. So that's 80 divided by 20, so it's 4% a year. The normal inflation was around 4% a year. And it still was. And then we had the spike because we pushed money into the economy in 2008 when the market was collapsing. We pushed money into the economy. That set off a little bit of a blip for inflation, came back down as we had a recession, and then right back to going up. Boom, 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 the same 4% from 2010. It's, let's say 210. And from 2020, let's say that's 260, is 50. In 10 years, 5% a year. So 1% a year, take us off the gold standard, 5% a year, ever since. Because and it's, you know, obviously because we just go further and further into debt, we print more and more money, we dilute the value of the money, so on and so forth. That's how it goes. It's basic economics, it's math, it's physics, it's very measurable stuff. Now here's where we get totally screwed, because in 2020, trying to stop an economic slump, we throw amazing amounts of money into the pool. We go from 230 in 2020 to 310 at least in 2024. All right, so it's 310 minus 220 is 90 divided by 4 years. That's 22.5% per year, or 22.5 points. It's not a percent. It's 22.5 points per year of gain. So remember, we went from 1 point to 5 points per year to 22.5 all of a sudden here. So of course people are pissed off. Everybody's pissed off. And the difference with this overall consumer price thing for urban consumers, this includes what they spend on rent, this includes what they spend on college, what they spend on medical bills, so on and so forth, prescription drug prices, everything's included here, their transportation costs, their electricity bill, blah, 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 everything that's not typically recorded in CPI. It's out of freaking control. It is crushing. That's what we're living in now. And it's not only is it not getting better, it's only topping out. And now if we're going to continue on a pace that's more than 5 points per year going forward, how will 5 points per year is what caused the crisis in the 80s. How are we going to go where we are now and continue at a higher trajectory than that as the norm? But that's what's really happening, and the Fed can't pretend by cutting rates, where's that? Look, the Fed can't pretend by cutting rates here that they're going to make an improvement here. Cutting rates doesn't make an improvement. Look, they did cut rates, right? They cut the shit out of rates right here. Look what happened. So you can see it's lined up exactly right. 2020's lined up, 2010's lined up. It's exactly the same time scale. The Fed cut rates drastically, and inflation went up drastically. Cutting rates doesn't lower inflation. Here's 205 to 210. Okay, here's 205 to 210. See, it started the uptick. There is nothing about cutting rates that's going to lower inflation. And not only that, but people are losing interest in the bonds. So this chart, this is the value of a 10-year note gauged against, 100 at one point, whatever. But this is the value of a 10-year note. So right now, the value of a 10-year note is 109. The value of a 10-year note was 140. But so if you bought a 10-year note here, they've never in history of bonds lost as much, notes and bonds lost this much money. If you bought a 10-year note in 2020 during COVID, right? The value of that note has gone from 140 to 109 in 4 years. You've lost 30% of the value of your note. So it doesn't matter what the coupon rate is, and the coupon rate was shitty, right? And well, it tells you here's the coupon rate. Right there, 0. So you think so the Fed funds rate's a 0, you buy your note at 2% or 3%, let's say for 10 years, and you're like, ha, I'm rolling now because the Fed funds rate is 0, and I've got a 3% note, so I'm gonna make 30% over 10 years on my note. But unfortunately, the value of your note falls from 140 to 100. I'm sorry, to 110 to 110. That's messed up. that's a whiteout on the bond market. So here's the problem also, because here's when the Fed announced, right? Here's when the Fed announced that they were basically, I'm sorry, they didn't announce, you know how they do it. But this is when the consensus became that the Fed was absolutely going to start cutting rates, and that saved us from a complete crash. Because these notes have a 2 to 3% coupon rate, and these notes had almost a 5% coupon rate. Therefore, these notes are worth significantly less than these notes that are being newly written. So the value of these notes collapsed. So now now people start believing that these notes at 4% are actually going to be more valuable, because in the future you won't be able to buy. So in other words, if people believe the Fed, that the Fed's going to lower rates again, then that means that these notes, which have a 5% coupon, 4 point whatever percent coupon, these notes will be more valuable than the notes that are written in the future at lower prices. And therefore these notes should start rising in value if the bond market believes the Fed. But they don't believe the Fed because of the inflation. Because this is reality. This is not reality. What the Fed makes the Fed making a proclamation that there's a Fed funds rate, it's not reality. Reality is what people are willing to pay for your bonds and what the rate of inflation is. And the rate of inflation here, it's not even coming down like this did, which wasn't very much. It's not coming down at all. It's flattening. Flattening at a really horrifyingly high rate is not an improvement. So that's where we are. And then I had Warren take a look at it, and then well, yeah, let's not forget that. And then Trump's talking about a 10 to 20% tariff on all imports from all countries. And we are a very, very big consumer of imports. He's talking about a 10 to 20% tariff on all imports and a 60% tariff on Chinese imports. Which is our biggest trading partner is China. That is a massive, massive inflationary tax on the people that will be counted as inflation, because inflation is what you pay for things. If things are tariffed, you're going to pay more at the store for the thing to pay for the tariffs. So that will also be a complete and utter disaster. And then we could have, we could end up with something that looks like this again. That's insane. There are concerns about the White House interfering in Fed policy, and of course our massive budget deficit, which is also fun to look at. So let's say national debt clock. That thing. Oh, it's still not there yet. It's slow. $36 trillion of debt. Exactly the number I predicted 2 years ago that we would be at when Trump took office. Well, when Biden's office ended, I didn't predict all the nonsense in between. I certainly didn't predict Donald Trump would come back. That was not even a thing. But I looked at the budget 2 years ago and I said we are going to hit $36 trillion by the end of Biden's term, and that's where we are. It's not even worth talking about. It really isn't. We spend $7 trillion. Elon Musk says he can get that down to 2. And that frankly, that's the basis for Donald Trump's only having a $2 trillion projected deficit, because Elon Musk is going to cut $2 trillion worth of government spending. It's totally bullshit, but that's what they're saying. Currently, we have $5 trillion coming in total revenue. From the states, 2.3 trillion, local taxes, 1.5 trillion. States have their own debt of $1.3 trillion, so they're kicking money up to the government, but that's not helpful. Income tax is $2.3 trillion. Payroll taxes are 1.6. Now think about that, because right there's a cutoff, right? There's a $100 and something thousand cutoff for Social Security and for payroll taxes. So that means obviously that richer people pay less taxes. They do pay the same amount up to $100,000, but everything over $100,000, they don't pay those taxes anymore. So if a guy earns $200,000, he's paying half as much tax as a poor person. As a poor, it's hard to think $100,000 as a poor person now, but it basically is. So a guy making $200,000 pays half as much tax as a guy making $100,000. Doesn't the guy making $100,000 need the money more? So the guy making $100,000 pays the full amount. The guy making $200,000 pays the same amount. The guy making $200 million pays the same as the guy making $100,000. Everybody pays the same max amount when they get to $100,000. Doesn't matter if you're Elon Musk and you made $60 billion since Trump was elected, you still don't pay anything over $100,000. And that's why Social Security is falling apart. That one flaw right there, if you took it away, would fix Social Security. But that would require everybody making more than $100,000 to kick in whatever it is, 7% of your income basically would go to payroll taxes and Social Security. But if everybody paid that 7% and kept paying it all the way to the top, everything would balance out on Social Security. Excise taxes, and then Trump wants, and here you go, tariff tax revenue, $70 billion. That's why Biden didn't cut Trump's tariffs. You get addicted to it. How are you going to cut them? There's $60 billion now. Trump wants to turn that into $250 billion or $300 billion, and then how are you going to cut it? Then it's going to be a thing you can't get rid of. So there's tariff tax. Here's the state taxes. They want to cut those, of course, cut those out. Corporate taxes, this is really sad. Corporate tax revenue is Wait, what? Oh, it's billions, right? So 479 billion is corporate tax revenue. That's all. The corporations make all the money and pay none of the taxes. Here goes state debt. Where's student debt? Total worker comp, federal comp. Oh well, it's somewhere. So anyway, so that's where we are. So the thing is that the income tax revenue is $2.3 trillion. The budget deficit is $2 trillion. So there's only a couple of ways to possibly balance this out. First of all, you can cut $2 trillion here, which is what Elon Musk says he's going to do. He's going to cut $2 trillion of the deficit. How? No one knows. We spend $1 trillion on defense. We spend $1 trillion on interest. We spend $3.3 trillion on Social Security and Medicare. So 3.3, 4.3, 5.3. So that means outside of these programs, we only spend $1.7 trillion on every single other thing the government does. So when you say you're going to cut $2 trillion, are you going to cut all of government? Even if you cut half of government, you're only cutting $800 billion. Even if you cut off half of what the government does, cut half of education, half of transportation, half of the CDC, just leave us with nothing. Strip the whole country down to the bare bones basics of nothing. Don't help anyone, don't aid anyone, don't have any FEMA, nothing. You're still going to be in the range of $800 billion. So you're only cutting half of that. Now you have to get $1.2 trillion. So you can't cut that. That's called default. Obviously nobody in the Republican Party is going to vote to cut defense. So that means you've got to find your cuts here. And that would be 1/3 of Social Security and Medicare. So the only thing that they can do to hit the goal that they're talking about, other than raising taxes, which they're going and by the way, they're going the opposite way on taxes, which means they have to actually save more than $2 trillion to balance the budget. But let's pretend that they're keeping taxes intact, but they're not, because they already said they're cutting the state tax to zero, they're cutting corporate taxes, they're cutting income for the high net worth people, blah, blah, blah. Even if they didn't have to make up any extra revenue here, they still would have to cut 1/3 of Social Security and Medicare. It's the only place you can cut. So it's all bullshit, and we're still in massive amounts of trouble because of this. $1 trillion a freaking year is now interest on our debt, and our debt is going up at a rate of $2 trillion a year. So if we're paying 1 trillion divided by 36, so we're paying 2.7% interest. Now that's a problem too, because we're paying 2.7% because we used to be able to sell notes at 2.7%, but now notes are 4%. So if our 2.7% goes up to 4%, that's 1.3% divided by 2.7% is almost 50%. Whoop. 1.3 divided by 2.7, 48%. So this number is going to increase by 50% if the Treasury notes, if our auctions are at 4%, it's going to increase until it ends up at 4%. That number will be 4%. So that in itself will add $500 billion to our deficit, as we have $500 billion more debt payments to make. But at the same time, we're going to have, in 4 years, if we don't cut this number, we're going to have $8 trillion more in debt times, 8 trillion, hang on. So 8,000 billion times 0.04 is another $320 billion worth of interest on the additional debt that will run up. If we only run it up $8 trillion, and the Congressional Budget Office says Trump is going to blow the debt up $17 trillion during his term, almost $4 trillion a year. If he does what he said he would do in his budget that he ran on in the election, $17 trillion of additional debt. Either way, we're going to be closer to $2 trillion in debt service. That will become our biggest budget item, bigger than Medicare, bigger than Social Security, just paying off our debts, our interest on our debt in just 4 years. So the premise for the bullishness is that nobody's going to notice this. that either no one will notice, or based on modern monetary theory, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter how in debt you go, doesn't matter how high your deficit is. But interestingly, Elon Musk says it matters. Donald Trump doesn't say it matters, but Elon Musk says it does matter. He says it's a problem. So who knows what the policies are going to be. You know, Elon Musk is not a stupid guy. He's sitting next to Trump having dinner every night at Mar-a-Lago. Donald Trump is having Elon Musk on phone calls with foreign leaders, apparently. You know, that's the way you get to Donald Trump. You talk in his ear, you drop little notes, and you convince him of something over time. And once you change his mind, it's very hard to change it back. So we don't know what the policy is going to be. Market expectations. So Fed cuts, boom, they're back on the Fed cut bandwagon. Goldman Sachs says that these policies can add another 0.75 to inflation over the next year, even more pressure on the Fed to counteract by raising, not lowering rates. And you know what's funny? Oh wait, let's see. Okay, I'm sorry. The old playbook says when the Fed signals rates, blah blah blah. That's not the case. We have higher yields despite it's like pushing on a string. It isn't delivering the results. Reduced confidence in the Fed's guidance. Market pricing and policy-driven inflation risks. So you know, and they're not talking about what I just talked about. You flat out can't sell bonds. How are you going to sell the massive amount of bonds we need to sell at under 4%? How are you going to convince people to buy them? The rate is all there is. The bonds are an instrument. It's a thing you choose to invest in. So I'm either going to put my money into Tesla stock or IBM or whatever, or I'm going to just put it in a bond and get 4%. But when inflation is running at 4%, then you're putting your money in a bond that does nothing. You are literally better off just keeping it in the bank. That's another indicator too. CD rates. Remember CDs? 5.37%, 5.25%, 4.75%. That's weird. You make more money in a CD that is federally insured than you make in a bond. Why? Because a CD doesn't lock your rates. You're not guaranteed to get the same rate for 10 years. But the current rate being offered by the capitalists to the consumers who only want a realistic return for their money, that current rate is 5%. Higher, much higher than the Fed, much higher than the bond auctions. So that's the direction things are going. And it's like I said, all these things are, they're quantifiable, they're understandable, they're verifiable. There are ways to look in the market and see what's actually happening. And it's all, these people on TV are too lazy, and TV and the press, but whatever. They're too lazy. They don't do their jobs. They don't check the information. They spout off whatever they learned in college or high school or at Goldman Sachs when they had their first job. That's all they know is what they learned when they were 30, 40 years younger. And you see these people every day, and just don't forget, do not get sucked into thinking that these people are studying. They're not going home and studying and hitting the books and looking things up and blah, 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 blah. They're not doing any of that. They're just saying the same bullshit they said that they made a career out of their whole lives. It's a lot of work to fight that bias. Believe me, I do it every day, but it's a lot of work. Or maybe it's an attitude. Maybe it's a matter of I realize that if you don't pay attention to what's really happening, you're never going to understand the real global macros. And that was what I was always focused on when I was younger. Is I always felt like it was really important to get the macros right, and therefore I've always had that attitude of like, how have things changed, not how things usually are. And that's Warren made a good point of that actually before. Warren made a very good point of that. He said the old playbook says when the Fed signals lower rate, you load up on bonds. However, this assumes a stable macro backdrop where inflation is under control and fiscal policy isn't throwing gas on the fire. Wow, he's really nailing it. That's not the case today. Okay, he understands it. He's not blinded by what he's learned before. Even though he's a machine and he learned things before and he's programming stuff before, he understands, and maybe it's because he learned it from me, but he understands that you can't rely on what you were taught in college or what you learned before. You have to look at the current situation for what it is and understand what's happening today in the real market. And you guys, you all know about CDs, right? But how many of you have looked at CD rates lately? You know, maybe your bank you saw it for savings, but the problem is we don't go to banks anymore. We used to be always aware of this stuff. Like you used to go to the bank and you always had to stand in line at the bank for something. And they'd have their things up saying, hey, put your money in CD, get this much, blah, blah, blah. We were all rate experts once upon a time. Now we don't pay attention to that stuff. Can the Fed maintain its inflation fighting credibility in this environment, or are we heading towards an era of, oh, wait, oh, that was me. I'm like, wait a minute, I said that. So the fundamental question is, I said, can the Fed maintain its inflation fighting credibility in this environment, or are we heading towards an era of policy-induced accommodation? That's what you got to worry about. If the markets believe the Fed can't stay the course on inflation, then the bond yields are going to keep going up. And the way the economy is, we're forcing the people who have no freaking money. They can't afford to buy any more stuff. They're tapped out on credit. That was my big thing last year, that the people are tapped out on credit and they are buying less things. And what's been happening now is that the capitalists who control the essentials, you know, utilities and medical health care, utilities, food, things like that, housing, those guys have been able to squeeze and squeeze and squeeze and keep raising prices. And what they're doing is forcing the consumers to choose, and you're seeing it in the earnings reports, the consumers are choosing the cheaper item. If it's, they're buying the cheaper cereal, they're buying the cheaper meat, they're buying the cheaper milk, you know, the cheaper eggs, whatever they can do, whatever they can go for cheaper, they're doing it because they don't have any more money. You can't raise the prices on things when they don't have money to buy them. So there are certain things you have to buy, and there are certain things you want to buy. The want to buys, consumer discretionary, are getting hit hard. Now, depends on the type of consumer discretionary, because the people who buy Porsches and Mercedes and whatever, they don't give a crap what things cost. Even the people who buy high-end houses, they don't care what the prices are. That's not important to them. Oh, insurance. Don't forget, insurance is going up for everybody too. That's awful. But so there's the luxury consumer discretionary is doing very well. I was just at Nobu yesterday, and they are doing very well. It was packed. You know, so people who have money can afford to go out and have a $300, not, you know, $300 for two people, but they can afford to have a $300 dinner. And the people who you know, and they'll fill it every night because, and that's why Nobu, you know, there's a new Nobu in, and frankly, I'm not going back for $300. It's like, I'm just like, no, thank you. The Miami one at least has a happy hour, you know, but this is a lot of money. But that's not even unusual for sushi now. High-end sushi is now, you know, getting towards $150, $200 per person for a good sushi meal. So this restaurant, Larry Ellison, Oracle, bought a hotel called the O Spa, which is up the street from me in it's not Palm Beach, it's Manalapan. Anyway, so it's up the street from me. And he works with Nobu in several places that they have. And so he said, I want to put a Nobu restaurant there. So he just sticks a Nobu into this hotel. It's not a proper Nobu. It's I was talking to the guys over there, and they were like, well, you know, we're cooking the hot food in the Italian place, and so they're using the Italian restaurant's kitchen for the hot food, and they've got their sushi bar at the Nobu counter, and then they're doing something else weird with the certain foods. So it isn't a proper Nobu. It isn't being done exactly the right way, but it was good. It wasn't. I'm not saying it was bad, but it was just. They were struggling to keep everything up to standards. Point is, this location has, trying to count in my mind, I would say they don't even have 100 seats in the restaurant. So it's not a very big place. They were almost packed. You couldn't get a reservation. It's booked up like crazy. So there's an unlimited amount of people who you can tap in the Palm Beach area who can afford to go out like that on a regular basis. There's unlimited. I mean, booked solid. They only opened, you know, less than a month ago. They're booked solid through Christmas. So you know, they're going to be a huge success. But the point is, that's the crowd that you tap. You want to have either the one-time sales like a Mercedes or a Porsche or something like that. You want one-time sales to people that have no concept of money, or you want to have the kind of high-end restaurants and spas and so on and so forth, and repeat luxury adventures for people who can afford to drop hundreds and hundreds of dollars every single day. Because every day you go out and spend a few $100, whatever. And there's enough people like that. When you do the math. How many people are like that? Well, we have 300 million people in this country. The top 10% is 30 million people, and the top 1% is 3 million people. And 3 million people are enough people to fill up these restaurants forever. So the top 1%, which is 30 million people, will occasionally go out. Well, the top 10%, which is 30 million people, they'll occasionally go out and splurge, right? Like you guys are all probably in the top 10%. I'm in the top 10%. I'm on the top 1%. We can go out once a month, once a week, and have a very nice dinner. Blah blah blah. 30 million of us doing that. That's enough to keep Nobu full, right? Just once a month, having a nice meal, going for a nice steak somewhere. You know, enjoying yourself, that's enough to keep those high-end places full all the time, because there's 30 million people and there's not that many seats. But but the top 1%, they eat like that every day. They have way more money than we do. Way more money. Top 1% in this country is at least, I'd say 10 million liquid at least. These are people who go out whenever they want, do whatever they want, so on and so forth. And that's what's sustaining. So when we look at investments in the luxury space, so consumer discretionary is a very broad category that includes a lot of things, and the things that cater to consumer. So consumer discretionary mini golf, right? Not going to do well. Because I'm going to spend the same money as the poor people at the mini golf place are going to spend, and they can't afford to keep coming. And I'm not going to come. I'm going to go the same once a month when my kids come down or something like that. I'll go with my kids to play mini golf one time in a quarter maybe, and that's not going to change. It doesn't matter that I can afford to do it. I'm not going to do it. I just don't have the desire. It's not that kind of purchase for me. But people who do it for their activities because they can't afford movies anymore and go to play mini golf, they can't afford mini golf either now. So places like that struggle because you can't get people to buy that much more. Like, I don't care how much a Coke costs, I'm going to buy a Coke whenever I feel like it. Whereas poor people are starting to say, I can't afford a Coke anymore. I certainly can't afford chocolate. If you're poor, you cannot afford chocolate anymore. It's gone crazy. So anyway, so bond traders decided the risk of lending money to the U.S. has doubled. And and what do I mean by that? Whoops, with bonds. Oops, silly me. This one was. Yeah, so they used to lend us money for 2.5%. Now they're lending us money for 4.5 to 5%. The risk of lending money to the United States has doubled. How is Donald Trump and the Fed going to make that better? They're not. Debt piles up, tariff stuff, more inflation, war talk, kicking out immigrants, having God knows what effect on everything else. Labor costs are going to go, obviously labor costs are going to go flying up. If you kick out, the labor force in the United States is 165 million people. That's our entire labor force. If you kick out 10 million people, you now have 155 million people, and we're 8 million people short on jobs now. We have 8 million open jobs that are unfilled right now. And even though unemployment is essentially at full employment. So if you kick out 10% of the labor force, unless Elon has, and maybe this is his grand scheme, maybe Elon is planning on rolling out the robots as we kick out, we're going to create we're going to create a need for labor, and he's going to provide a solution of these robots. And even if they don't work well, at least they're better than nothing. That's a smart move, actually. So at the moment you say, well, I don't need your robot because I can hire a Mexican or whatever. So you don't buy Elon's robot. But if there's no Mexicans around and you have an empty workspace, then you say, okay, show me the robot. So maybe that's his long-term gain. And so I said, the Fed and they're in a position now where they're just trying to get people, like this picture, they're just trying to get people into buy the bonds. That's their job now. They're just carnival barkers saying, come on in, step right in, buy some US bonds, buy our debt, buy this. Here you go. There's unlimited supply. You've never seen a debt pile this high. You got to buy some. That's what they're doing. Nobody's buying the debt because they don't think the United States is going to have any more to issue next month. $600 billion a month of debt is issued. Actually, it's $200 billion of new debt and $400 billion of rollovers every single month. And that's the $400 billion. Remember I said it was going up from the debt. The debt is 2.7%, right? It's currently 2.7%. And now it's rolling over at let's say 4%. Let's just say 4%. So 1.3%. So every month, $200 billion worth of debt. Oh, sorry, it's 200 billion. 200. Oh no, actually, no, sorry. 200. That is billion. So it's $200 billion worth of debt times one. Nope. 0.13 is $2.6 billion. So every month, the debt rollover causes, where was it? Wherever it was. Anyway, you remember on the trade. So every month, the rollover debt causes, nope, I used the wrong number, double that. So it's 400 billion of rolled over debt times, well, no, you know what? You got to include the new debt too. So it's 600 times 1.3. 0.3, because all of the debt comes out at higher rates. So every month, 1.3% is 7.8%. So $7.8 billion is added to our debt service every single month. That's added to just the debt service. So yeah, it's kind of hard to keep up, isn't it? So we have to get people to buy this debt somehow. Now CPI came in at 2, but the core CPI is what matters. Came in at 3. It's 3.3% year over year at the moment. And like I said, that's much hotter than historical norms. And we're acting like this is a victory. And it's certainly not a victory at all. And then you have to consider the dollar. And the dollar has plowed right back to 106. And it was not very long ago. Nope, not that long, daily. Right there. At the end of September, it was at 100, and now it's up 6%. So that's keeping a lid on inflation. It's nothing the Fed has done, it's nothing else. It's a big, huge pop in the dollar that's making it seem like inflation is calming down. If the dollar goes the other way for whatever reason, then everything else explodes. So that's the kind of stuff we're watching out for. Just so you know. When was that Jay-Z song from? It was like 2000. It was from the last recession. It's from like 2006 or something like that. So it still applies. So except Jay-Z, yeah, it's not Jay-Z. Except Jay-Z's now a billionaire. since his song 20 years ago, he became a billionaire. So good for him. Somebody's got to escape the mess. Look at Kava. These guys are crazy, huh? This is 80. This is 100% gain since August. And doing very, very well. What else is important? Nope. So now I want to talk about the portfolios. All right, so in the butterfly portfolio, this is very important. We're going to talk about it a bit. Okay. Oh, that means I got to find the last one. Damn it. Oh, wait. Bet I reference it. Oh. What is this? Oh, there it is, the October portfolio review. How clever. All right. The short-term portfolio review. Butterfly, okay. So we didn't do many changes last month, but the key change, the butterfly portfolio is fairly conservative because we're just looking to draw an income. We're just looking to have positions that are going to sell and make money on a regular basis. That's our primary concern. So we had IBM, and our main position is we have 60 long January 160 calls, which are nicely in the money, right? And they were worth 75 bucks, which was $450,000. So we were long IBM. We had some January 200 short calls. Now remember we talked about this with IBM. That's what we were looking at. What day is this? Does it say the date? Oh yeah. Okay, so here we are. It's October 16th, 17th. We're right here at this red line up here. So I'm writing up a portfolio. Here's the situation, and our spread looked like this. We had a massive profit here, 188%, 296,000. We had a $82,000 loss on this. We had a $37,000 loss on that. But it was a $200 call, and I said, I don't think, I don't see how that number is justified. This is not justified by the fundamentals. There's no justification for this number. This is more realistic. 200 is realistic. It's what we predicted in the year, and nothing IBM has done has given us any reason to think it should be higher than it is. And therefore, with earnings coming up, and that was on the 23rd, here's what we decided. Nope. So just because you have a conservative portfolio doesn't mean you can't take a logical chance. So I said, let's cash in the 60 calls, $453,000, and I'm going to say earnings won't justify a 50% bump. What I mean by 50% bump, from down here, from 160 to 230. So let's do the following. What are we doing? We're buying a 210, 270 bull call spread. Notice 210 is way up here. Why did I do that? Because the 210, 270 bull call spread had a very small delta differentiation. I'm not going to go start looking everything up. We'll run out of time. But they had a small delta differentiation. So let's say it's like 0.30. That means for every dollar IBM drops, I'm only going to lose 30 cents on the spread. So I'm maintaining a spread. I do believe that 2 years from now, 270 is a reasonable target for IBM. I don't believe that 230 is reasonable now, but 2 years from now, sure, I could see 270. So we went with 100. We went from 60 to 100, but you know what? We took 250,000, 450 off the table. We spent 250 on the spread, but then we took the short calls and we rolled them out to the short April 19th. So we had 2026 and 2025 short calls that were 200 shorts, and we rolled them out to the short April 230s. Why the April 230s? That's right where we were. They had the most premium, and I also don't believe in the target. Why could I sold the 240s? They have more premium, but I would have gotten less money. That's no fun. So we sold the 230s that had a better premium and better money because everybody was betting IBM was going to keep going up. This is what the chart looked like on that day. Obviously, that's how come it came out. It was October 16th at 3:52 p.m. It's exactly when I printed the chart. That's true. They all timestamps, so we know exactly what we're doing. So that's what the chart looked like at the time. And I said, well, in that case, let's sell 100 April 230s because I think that's way too much. We sold them for 19. I think it came out for like 17 or something like that. But we sold them for 19. We got 170,000 in short money. The difference is this money would have taken us until 2026 to collect. This way, these are going to expire very shortly, April, and that means we're going to have another quarter and another quarter and another quarter and another quarter to sell. So if we can make $190,000 every few months, every 5 months, let's say, that's going to be we're going to get 4 more chances to do that on the next cycle. That's $800,000 we can end up pocketing just selling short calls. We're not going to, because it's too aggressive. We're not going to sell 100 short calls every time. It's just, since we were stuck with the 60 short calls, let's just roll into a maximum premium now. Because good, bad, or ugly, we sold $190,000 at premium. And premium will expire worthless, whether IBM is at 230 or 190 or 270, the premium will still expire worthless. At 270, they would be $40 in the money, and we'd be down 190,000, but we would just roll them again to a higher strike. We rolled from the 200s to the 230s for barely any money, for 40,000 bucks. So if we could, so that was the choice we made here. If we had to roll again, we would roll up another 30 bucks in strike for 40,000 bucks. So it's not 100% guaranteed move, but it was statistically the most likely thing. It was logical. Now, what else did we do? We offset this. We offset 190,000 with $90,000 worth of short calls, short puts, and here's where we're getting caught, right? Because now IBM is dropping. But like I said, I believe 210 to 270 is the right range. So if we get burned on these, we'll just roll them out to a lower, longer strike as well. But even if we do get burned on these, and you'll see how that works out right now, even if we get burned on those, where's IBM? So the 230 short put, IBM dropped to 210. The 230 puts at $20 in the money. These things went from 29.60, they only went to 36.50. We did not take a big hit on those. We did take a $20,000 hit, but look at the gain on the April 230s. We made $129,000. So the puts that we sold for $88,000 were protecting us from the calls we sold for $185,000. We could win if we thread the needle, but I mean, see, they're both 230s. We can't win on both sides. We could conceivably, if we thread the needle and if we hit 230 in April, great. But the point is, we're going to win one side or the other, and whichever side we lose, we just take the profits from the winning side and use it to make our roll as well. And eventually, we'll get our money back. Probably. And meanwhile, because we did the spread, remember we took $450,000 off the table and we traded it for this spread. Because we did the spread, we only lost net $18,000. There was a $20 drop and we only lost $18,000. We would have lost $20. We were so deeply in the money that we would have lost 20 times 60, we would have lost $120,000, and instead we lost $18,000. Well, we didn't lose it, we gained, we really gained the money that we took off the table and gave back 20,000 after that. And then these old puts, we're not worried about those. So these puts we're ignoring because they're going to expire worthless. That's why they weren't part of anything we were talking about. These were going to expire worthless. So our new spread is the 210-270 spread. We sold the April 230 calls, and now we're going to finish the butterfly portfolio tomorrow, or yeah, probably tomorrow, not today. We are going to take some of that off the table, because how do you not take that off the table? We're up 70%. There is a risk that it could go back up between now and April. It's only $20 below. So no, we're going to lock this gain in. We can make $55,000 100 other ways, but you know what? We'd be idiots to lose this money. We made $129,750 in a week. So, not a week, I'm sorry, month, in a month. But we're up 70%. Things could go wrong. Why would we risk this? Why do we, if this goes to 10, that's $50,000 that we lose. That's crazy. So rather than be greedy and stay in this trade, we're like, okay, we're done with that. Let's give IBM a chance to go back up in the channel or something. If it's really there, it's going to go back up in this channel. If it falls below this channel, we're going to have to sell something more aggressive anyway. So let's cash in while we're at the bottom of the channel. It's pictures right there. Look, bottom, 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 holds, 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 holds. So all good so far. And this is a whole back to the 5% rule, right? Weak bounce, strong bounce. So this is probably a failure at the strong bounce line. If this fails at the weak bounce line, we're going to be very inclined to cover again. If this goes to the strong bounce line and fails, we are still going to be extremely worried. But if it goes through the strong bounce line, then we're probably going to see something like a W pattern that takes us back to 220, 230 range. And then we're going to cover anyway, right? Then we're going to want to still cover. So there's basically no way in which it isn't smart to buy back the 100 short calls now and lock in the gains. And locking in the gains is what this whole thing was about. We had the 160 calls that we had bought God knows when, right? We had the 160, 230 spread. It worked out exactly the way we thought it would. The 160s, I'm sorry, it's 160, 200. We have the 160, 200 spreads. And the 160s were much higher than we thought they would be, because we thought they'd be at 200 next year. We thought 200 was a fair value for IBM next year. It was at 240. How dumb would we have been to not take that off the table? We were 100% over our goal. And that's how we took $240,000 out of a trade that was actually, and let's see what it was designed to be, if I can get there. There we go. So what was this designed to be? It was designed to be, and see this is May, and this is later. So we had already sold some other calls and puts, so there's probably some other profit in there at some point. But that's where we were. So this trade net is 157.5 minus 64.5, right? The 160-200 trade. And then we sold the puts for 52 minus 52.350. And then we sold the, oh, I'm sorry, then we sold those short calls. We sold these short calls, we sold these short calls, and then we sold the puts for $25,600. So we were in the spread for net $15,000. We had the obligation to buy 2,000 shares of IBM at 160, which we thought was a very good price back in February when we decided to do that. So we're in for net $15,000, and these 160 calls jumped to $453,000. The spread is only a $40 spread. It only $240,000 was the most we were going to take out of the spread if we didn't adjust it. So we had 15,000 in, and we have an opportunity to take $453,000 off the table. Of course we did that. Of course we did. It doesn't matter what the rest of the spread looks like. I got 450,000 back on 15,000. I just got to figure out how to make the rest expire worthless, and I win, or even close to worthless. Even if the rest of the positions claw back $200,000, I'm happy. I was only ever going to get $200,000 back on this spread, and here I am taking 450 off the table. All right, so you can replay this 100 times and get the idea. But I mean, this is the most important thing we ever do in the butterfly portfolio, is we take advantage of a big winner. We never expected, we did expect to make $200,000 at the end of next year. That's what we expected out of this trade, that we would have $200,000 back from our 15,000 investment, plus we plan to make some money along the road. Now, it was like February when we took this trade. So we started the trade in February. It was at 180, and we did a 160-200 spread. That seemed pretty damn reasonable in February, right? Then when it dropped in May, we sold puts because we thought that was kind of silly. And we said, what a great time to sell the 160 puts. So we sold the 160 puts, we got more money, lowering our cost basis even further than it was before we started. And then and then we sold some more short calls because we said, oh, we better. That turned out to be a mistake, but we sold 200 calls, and we had one set sold, then we sold another set. That was basically a mistake, but the reason was we said, well, we just sold these puts, we got to cover them somehow. So it's the same logic. We sold some calls, and we said they're not both going to expire in the money, and they didn't. So now we have a nice profit on the short calls, and it's so far up that we don't even want to cover them. And now we are, and then it went so high. Only 8 months after we bought the spread, it went so high that I said, you know what, screw this. Now it's a completely different trade, because now instead of sitting there and hoping that IBM is at 200 at the end of 2026, or not at the beginning, at the end of 2025. Now let's just take this 450,000 that's being offered to us by suckers who think it's going to go higher, and let's turn this into another kind of spread. So now we buy 100 spread for 2027 that are really protecting. It was 210, 270, right? So it's the idea was really to just I don't have to guess. Yeah, 210, 270. So we're protecting our spread with this spread. We're spending $250,000, but it's not a $250,000 spread, it's a $700,000 spread. So we have $450,000. Don't forget we have $450 in our pocket, plus this spread is providing us another, well, we have sorry, 200 in our pocket. So we have 200 in our pocket after buying the spread, and this spread is giving us another number $450,000 worth of protection. So now I have $650,000 worth of protection against these short calls that are April 230s that I feel very, very confident it was way too high. All right, and then we've got the and then we sold these puts, which obviously because I was saying, what if it does? Because I have to be like, what if this does keep going? Well, then I have $90,000 towards spending on a roll, and if it doesn't keep going, not 90, sorry, 190. I have 190 towards spending on the roll, and I'm sorry, if this keeps going up, I have 90,000 profit here that goes towards adjusting this position and pushing it higher. If this goes down, then these might get more expensive, but I have $190,000 profit coming to me by April to pay for this, whatever I have to do. And that's where it is. And so then you go to the portfolio and you say, well, what actually happened? IBM dropped 20 bucks just like we thought it was, 10%. Well, you're up 10%, you're up 10%. Well, actually, I'm sorry, you're up 30 bucks from that thing. So let's say 15%. So IBM pulled back 15%, but we thought it would pull back to 200 because we think 200 is all they're worth. So it's still running a little hot, but the April calls that we just sold made $129,000, and we still have that money in our pocket. We still have the 200,000 in our pocket. We still have this spread, which is now worth 180. Then we bought it to 250, so we lost. Oh no, yeah. So anyway, we lost 40,000 so far. But we made 120 here, we lost 40 there, we're up 80. Fantastic, we're up 80 plus the 200 we already took off the table before, plus we could liquidate this asset for 180. And that brings us back to almost the 450 that we took off the table. Very, very successful, but you know what? We don't need to take it off the table because we're gonna make another fortune just milking this trade, because that's what the butterfly portfolio is all about. But usually we're very passive, and usually we don't do anything with these positions. We just make a little tiny adjustment here and there. But when you have an opportunity to change your trade and change the direction, saying, okay, you know what? We are now in the top of, nope, not that one. We are now in the top of the channel. If we're in the top of the channel, we sell, we turn short. If we're in the bottom of the channel, we turn long. So what are we going to do tomorrow? Or well, yeah, what are we going to do tomorrow when we review the portfolio? We're going to go long. It's not that complicated. We're taking advantage of the fact that people don't understand what a trading range is. And they don't understand the value of something. We know IBM is worth 200. We're really confident buying at 200. So we're very happy to go long up here. And less so nervous. Before I was nervous with the short puts, I aggressively sold the 230s. Why? Because I was aggressively selling the April short 230s. I could not afford to be wrong. Well, we could afford it, but I mean, it would suck to have been wrong if IBM went to 260. Would have been very annoyed. But you know what? I would have had 90,000 extra dollars from the short puts to spend to roll the long calls up to the 260 short calls. And at some point, you hope reality is going to take over. It doesn't always, because we use this strategy with Tesla. We used this strategy with Tesla when it did this. And we made some money back, but then we got clobbered. And you know why? Because like I'm saying right now, to close out those short Aprils, we didn't do it. We made this money and we had short whatevers, and then we thought we were letting them ride into whenever they expire, and we got burned. And then we had to like double down and do it again. And thank God we had this dip and we got the frick out. But we ended up even. We should have made a fortune and we ended up even because we were greedy. And that's why tomorrow I will certainly be closing out these April short calls, because that's the stupidest thing to be. The concept works very well, but if you're greedy and you think that you're always going to get what you want, that's not going to happen. And here we made a fortune shorting Tesla. It was like the greatest trade ever. It was the same thing though. It's like, crazy gains, big sell-off, crazy gains, big sell-off, crazy gains, big sell-off, all the way back to where we started. And that was it. And now we got out of Tesla here. We stopped playing them. We were happy with our shorts, and once it went below 200 and something, we were like, okay, that's enough. But we never went long again because I don't really have faith in those guys. And like I said, this is now 100 times earnings. Here it is. Here you go. Forward P, the forward earnings, 98.7 at 326. 100 times earnings. This is not a new company. It's not a startup. They're already doing their stuff. They're not going to suddenly magically triple their revenues next year. Okay, they're not even going to double their revenues next year. They're only, in fact, you'll be lucky if they stay below 100 times earnings next year. Earnings have to catch up. The price isn't. If the price catches up, you're screwed, right? If the price catches up to 50x, then it's going to be 160 bucks. That's right down here. That's 50 times earnings. Still a lot. So if the price catches up, everybody who owns Tesla is totally screwed. If the earnings catch up, they've got to somehow figure out how to make 100. They have to make 100% more money. 100% more money to knock the PE down from 98 to 50. Think about how unlikely that is. So it's a great short. It's the same great short it was back when we shorted it here when it was 400. But how can you mess around? Because the game. Elon Musk has his finger on the scale, and Donald Trump can announce on January 20th, Donald Trump could announce something that is ridiculously pro-Tesla, like every basically you can say there's a tax on everything, but Tesla is excluded from import taxes. So Tesla's factory in China can ship cars over here, and we're excluding them because we have a special arrangement with the government, whatever. It doesn't matter anymore. All the old rules about the deal making and the special treatments and all that, it's all gone completely out the window. The Supreme Court's just giving Trump complete power to do whatever he wants. So, do you know for a fact he won't do that? If you don't know for a fact he won't do that, you can't short Tesla. Trump can say that all government vehicles purchased for the next 4 years are going to be Teslas. He's going to say, I made a deal with Elon Musk, blah, blah, blah. And the deal will be that he rips the government off at $10,000 per car. And Trump says, okay, the entire government vehicle fleet of like several million vehicles will be all Tesla. And he basically says he's buying Tesla's entire production run for the next 4 years. And essentially every single vehicle Tesla makes for the next 4 years is going to go to the government. They're going to pay him right away, cash, whatever, and he's going to make $10,000 per car, and everybody considers that fair and honest and whatever, and there's no shopping around or anything else. That can happen. That's how the world is now. So suddenly they justify their earnings in a really weird way that doesn't make much sense to for the way business has been done for the last 1,000 years. That's not how things work, but it can happen. So therefore, stay away stock. Tempting though it may be, it's a stay away stock. I mean, that's the thing. You can't even be sure that the laws of the country are going to stand. So when you look at the future, you say, that's what made the United States so investable. And that's, by the way, a big thing. The reason people invest in America is because we have these laws and these checks and balances, and things don't suddenly change while you're doing business. So when you build a factory in Minnesota, you know that the wages are such and the this is such and the compensation is such and the taxes is such, and it's going to stay in a kind of a normal range that you can plan on. Now you don't know anything. You don't even know if you're going to be able to get workers. You know, where is it? At Columbus, Ohio, where they're eating the cats and dogs. You could be building a factory in Columbus, Ohio, and all your cat and dog eating workers who you plan to hire are being kicked out and deported. And now you've got a plant, but there's no one to work there. And if you're not getting subsidized by the government, or there could have been or you could have had a subsidy to build there, and now it's gone because that was a subsidy that was based on hiring immigrants, and Trump's not going to renew that. He's going to say, no, we're not doing that subsidy anymore. So now you've committed to building a plant in a place where there's no employees. You're not getting the subsidy you were promised, and the Environmental Protection Agency doesn't exist anymore. And so now there's not even a reason for your clean technology. That's not an attractive environment to doing business. That's why we don't do business. That's why we don't like doing business in China, because they changed the rules. Japan doesn't change the rules. Australia doesn't change the rules. Europe doesn't change the rules. That's why they're investable. Countries that change the rules are tricky to get to invest in. And now we're going into a whole trade war situation with China, and the rules are going to change every other day. It's going to be a real nightmare. So, as you've noticed, our portfolio has been completely cleaned out of Chinese stocks. I think we might still have Alibaba. I think we have with Baba. Baba, there you go. So we still have Alibaba. We're probably gonna give up on this because there's no way to know if we're gonna be able to trade it. Who was it we had? Oh, it was China Telecom. We had China Telecom a couple of years ago. We had China Telecom, was a big holding for us, and and they delisted it from the U.S. exchange, and we lost so much money. It was terrible. It was untradeable. They just declared it delisted, and that was the end of it. We thought that there would be some sort of what's the word? Whatever you call it. We thought there would be a waiver or something that would allow us to trade on the Chinese, whatever. It was a nightmare. The whole process was awful. It's like, yes, we were able to exchange the shares, but it was so difficult and so tedious. I would never do that again. So better to get out of things and not even take the chance. But that means essentially China's effectively off the table for us now. We can't invest in it because we don't know what kind of crazy stuff is going to happen. See, they're coming for us right now. Little police action outside. And that's a good time to quit. So I'm going to go hide and. What is that? Oh, it's a fire. Oh, past us. Apparently there's a fire somewhere. All right. Anyway, so that's the lesson there as far as that goes. We have our whole portfolio review, which is not this. It's Tuesday. Goodness me, I gotta go out and check that out. Oh, he says Tuesday and clicks on Wednesday. Oh, hang on a second. So Headway Trader says, what's your view on SoFi's valuation after doubling since August? That's a tricky one. I think that long term, I'm really big SoFi fan, so I'm gonna punt that till I get a chance to look at the portfolios. But I like them a lot. I still like them long term a lot. But yeah, 1345 it's tricky to stay with them when they're, again, forward P. Their current P is 100, and they're growing fantastically. They're gonna double next year, and their forward P is gonna drop from 113 to 47. That's fantastic growth. But do I want to pay 50, even for fantastic growth, that's what we have to decide. So it goes back to the same kind of thing. It's like, yes, I want to stay bullish, but I'm going to want to also figure out a way to cover them. And if we take a look at I don't know if we did a SoFi yet. So these are all our portfolios. $700 a month portfolio is doing phenomenal, 93% now. That's crazy. That's really. I mean, our goal was to be at no less than 20%. We figured 20 to 40% for the first 2 years, and we're at 93%. So that's going. And considering we can't do anything weird with the trades, everything has to be, within the guidelines of an IRA. So we can only buy, we're basically buying bull pull spreads mostly. We're buying stocks and we're buying bull pull spreads. It just means we have to be right every single time, and we generally are. Not Flagstar, but Flagstar is not too good. Flagstar is NYCB. They changed their name. But mostly we're doing very well. We got the money talk portfolio. Oh, did we have SoFi in this one? I wonder. Trucks, Trivago, nope. How about the money talk portfolio? We certainly had SoFi there, didn't we? No. And how about the short-term portfolio? Would we have SoFi there? I don't think so, no. Then how about, well, that brings us back to the butterfly portfolio. And we don't have SoFi there either because it's not a range-bound stock. So I guess we'll have to look over here. So in the long-term portfolio, whoa, what's that? What the hell just happened? There's SoFi. So in the long-term portfolio, we had the 5-10 spread. So we're below over that, and we have the short puts. So the question is now, what do we do about it? The problem is, I don't think it's not like IBM. I don't think 13,757 is too low is too high for SoFi. I would not short them here, but I want to somehow take advantage of this, the fact that our $5 calls are now $9. So that's $90,000. This was only a $50,000 spread. I got to figure out how to do something with that, right? So that's what I'm going to figure out. And I'm not going to figure it out now, but that's generally what we're going to be looking at there. So I want to take advantage of the fact that it moved up so much and the options are so expensive, but we have to figure out how we're going to do anything about it. Let me take a look. Oh, see, we already made changes. We took, oh, that's not this portfolio. Which portfolio? That's not the long term. That was in the income portfolio. Wow. So in the income portfolio, when we were at $10, we took our $5 calls off the table. We replaced them with another spread with 250 $10 calls, and we sold 200 of the $15 calls where we're going to get burned on those, and we'll have to roll them. So that's what we decided to do last week with that position. Oh, I hope that one didn't put us in trouble. That's in our income portfolio. We're going to review that tomorrow too. Anyway, so that's where we are. Everybody says we have it in $700 portfolio. Yeah, but we're only bullish in the 700. So it's not like it can hurt us. In the 700 portfolio, we do have it. Where is it? No, we don't. Unless I missed something, let me know in chat. It's not in the 700 portfolio. So I don't remember if we took it out already or whatever. Oh, I'm sorry, we have this. Oh. Hang on, does that mean I missed an adjustment? Oh no. Where are you? Oh, it's down there. That's what we did with it. So yeah, we thought we were happy with 10 last week. And so what we ended up with is we flipped we cashed out the short calls or whatever. We ended up with 10 calls. We've got the short 15 calls, and we sold, oh, yeah, I think this was a spread anyway. We had a 10-15 spread, which was 7.5, so those two uncovered, right? And then we sold 2 of the April 12s, and now it's at 13.57. So we're gonna have to roll these. We're taking a hit here. But notice the hit doesn't matter. We're up 1820 minus 1100, so we're up 700. And what was the net of the spread when we started? The net of the spread was 27, was 14 minus 4, so it's about 1,000. So it's $1,000 spread that we took in October, and we're up 1,100 bucks. I'm sorry, we're up 700 bucks. So we're up 70%. So there's no need to do anything. Certainly not on that one. It's doing exactly what we want. We would like to roll the April short calls to maybe a higher short call in a longer month, and just squeeze a few more bucks out of it. But there's no it's not necessary now, because if you look at it, these are $3, and this is a $12 call, so it's paying at 15. This is 50% premium in this thing. So if we wait, there's no pressure right now to do anything about it. We just have to keep an eye on it and see what we're going to do next. All right, so thanks everybody for coming. I would have liked to, you know what, next week we'll take another look at the portfolios too, because we didn't get as much portfolio time as I wanted. But I also am not done with the portfolio. So study for this week is going to be go over the portfolios, bring your questions, and we will talk about the nuts and bolts of the changes next week, okay? Because the reviews are very, very important. And not to mention the fact there's tons of new trades in the reviews. Like last week's IBM adjustments were an entirely new trade essentially, so, and it did phenomenally well. So it's always worth looking at that also. All right. Thank you for coming, everybody. I appreciate it, and we'll do it again next week. All right. Take care.